Hello everybody, this is Nicky Jameson here, and today we're going to look at some more painting in Rebelle 6 Pro. So what we're going to look at today is a couple of things. We're going to look at the gouache brushes in Rebelle 6 Pro I'm using. So here are the gouache brushes, but in order to demonstrate them to you, I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm actually going to use selections. So we're going to create a kind of abstract, an abstract piece where I show off some of these brushes in Rebelle. I haven't experimented a lot with them. I did do a small painting with them, and they're very interesting. They're different from the watercolor brushes, which I will also demo in maybe a separate video later on. So this is these are some pieces I have done. This is actually all on one layer. You can actually do this on several layers, but what I've used here are the brushes, the selection tool, and I've also used the wet and dry layer. So using those different things, you can get very different and very interesting shapes. So I'm going to first of all go on a new layer. I'm going to close this particular layer, and before we start, what I have done is that I have used a different canvas. What I'm using here is a cold press, it's called cold press dust. I haven't tried this before, but Rebelle does have a lot of papers. I usually prefer using a coarse canvas, but I just thought I would try using this canvas just to see what we get. So the first thing I'm going to do, and this is still very abstract and it's still exploratory, is I'm going to go to the selection tool. So you can find the selection tool underneath the panel called tools. So you have your brushes here, and you have your range of tools here. Okay, so this is a blow tool, and this square one is the selection tool. So you will find many different selections. You've got, and also the magic wand, with which you can do a contiguous shape. So I'm going to just choose the square selection first. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection. I'm going to pull I'm using an art pen and my Wacom, or my Wacom tablet. So I just press and pull to create a square, or in this case a rectangle shape. So this is what I'm going to create at the moment. You can also use something called stencils in Rebelle for this, but right now we're going to use selections. So to commit this selection, I'm going to hit enter, and I'll have these marching ants here. What I tend to do, so that I can see where I'm actually putting the paint, is I leave the selection visible. You can actually change the visibility of your selection. I can't remember which one it's under. Yeah, it's under edit, show selection line. So it's the shortcut is Alt Q, and Q is show selection. So we're back to showing the selection. I'm going to hit B to go back to a brush, and I'm going to choose one of these gouache brushes here. So this is gouache linear. Right now it is, I put it at 57, and I'm going to just be fairly liberal with my color palette. I do have my visual settings on, so, but they're not really going to play a huge part here, in that they're not going to have, it's going to flow, but it may not have drips. Okay, so what I'm doing here is that I'm just filling this selection box, and I'm going right to left, and what you'll notice is because I've picked a selection, or I've drawn a selection, I can paint within that selection, but not anywhere outside. If I inverted the selection, I could paint outside it, but not inside it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Control D, and that will keep my selection, keep it whole. So what I'm going to do now is pick another selection, do the same thing, but I'm going to maybe, and I'm doing this on one layer for now. Okay, and then I'm going to go to enter, and then we're going to look at color linear, gouache linear 2. So let's pick something that's maybe, so gouache linear 2, you can see on this paper it has a very coarse feel. Now, the gouache brushes, they do have a water flow, but it's not as flowy as watercolor. I think it's a little bit more controllable, but you can see here that it is actually starting to flow. So I'm just going to hit Control D, and that will commit that. And you'll see it is starting to flow into the other selection. Okay, now if I dry the layer for the moment, if I dry it, it will stop the flow. So I want to dry it for now. If I dry it, there'll be no flow there. Because I've done the selection over this paint, it's actually going into the previous selection. And we can actually make that happen a lot more organically if we want. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to draw another selection. I'll draw a square again, and let's do it this way. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap. Go to Enter, and let's pick the gouache filbert. Let's pick another color, maybe red. And I'm going to make the brush a bit bigger. There's quite a bit of water. The water's quite high in this particular experiment, but you can see this is what the gouache filbert is doing. Okay, and if I hit Control D to commit or to remove the marching ants, you'll see this isn't flowing into anything. It's not moving. Okay, so let's try this again and do another selection, and then maybe I'll pick another shape. Now this time I think I'll go, let's try this. Let's go over and go Enter, and I'm going to do something a little bit different for this one. I'm going to pick the gouache round. Okay, so let's pick, this is fairly bright, and I'm going to lower my brush size. I'm going to make the water about medium and make it quite opaque. I like this particular brush actually. This is really quite nice. Okay, so this has kind of like a raised brush stroke, but it's really nice. So you can see it's starting to flow. It's not going outside the bounding box. Now if I went to my not show my selection lines, and let's say I did Alt Q. Let's go back and do Alt Q. Where are we? Alt Q. I would still have it here, but we're not showing the actual selection line. So that is an actual option if you don't want your selection to show. Still not going past its bounding box. But if I'm to, let's say I wet the layer. Okay? If I wet the layer and then I did, you will see that the red is actually flowing into the blue, because what I've done is that I've created I've created some water flow. I'm going to dry the layer again, and let's go and choose another shape. So I'm not using any blow tool here right now. I'm going to choose the ellipse, because sometimes you can see this even better. So with this you can make like a circle. Let's put this round about here, depending on the size. Now to make, all I did is that let's just do Control Z and get rid of that. Oops. And I want to go back and dry that layer. I don't want that moving all over the place. Okay, so now I have a round shape here. I had to fiddle around with some of the buttons there, because they weren't actually doing what I thought they should be doing. But anyway, so we've got our ellipse, or our circle. It's more a circle than an ellipse. And I'm using the round 2 to paint inside that circle. Okay, and you can see it's picking up the paper grain. If I was to change my diffusion speed, let's move the diffusion speed to 3 just for the moment. The layer is dried, and that's why it stopped the flow here. So I can paint anywhere in this circle, okay, and then if I do, and then what I wanted to do here is I wanted to add some more paint. If I can do this, see if this works. I wanted to add some more paint, which I can do within the circle, and I'm going to do Control D, and the layer is dry at the moment, or it should be dry, and then if I do wet the layer, you're going to see it's going to diffuse outwards. It's going to keep its relative shape, but you can see it's flowing out because the layer is now wet, and you can see what it's doing with the paint. So this is an interesting way to create some abstracts. Let's dry that layer again. I don't want it going too crazy. And I'm going to do, I was going to do another circle. How about we try a circle again? Why don't we try it here? Hit enter, and let's do, we've got nice, what color goes, red and orange will make green. Now if I turn the nano, okay, here's a nice blue. If I turn on my nano, my pigment mixer, sorry, not my nano pixel, I'm always confusing the two. If I turn that on, it will actually mix the pigment. Let's see what happens. Already you can see that the color is brighter. Okay. I'm going to turn it off for now, because sometimes I find when I have it on, I start getting very strange things happening with the program. So anyway, we've got this showing. We can even add maybe some white in there, and then if I do Control D, you'll see that it will more or less maintain its shape. It won't start flowing, except it will flow within the circle, within the selection. Okay, but if I go to, and I did dry that layer, but let's say I wet the layer. Now you will see it starts moving. It starts moving outside the bounds of the circle, keeping more or less the shape of the selection. So this is really interesting. I'm actually going to dry the layer. It's going off the page there. So you could do this on several different layers. But if I was to add another layer, and I put, what should we do? Maybe let's go here. Let's do a polygon. Let's be adventurous and see what happens. So I'm going to, I think I do shift. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so with a polygon, I almost forgot how to do that. With a polygon, you click and then you tap in the different areas, and you can make your shape. That you have to close the shape up, okay? Otherwise it won't work. And if you lift your pen up without tapping, you get that weird thing that I had earlier. So let's have a look and see what we get. What color haven't we used here? Let's try the gouache bristle. This is a nice brush. So once again, let's turn it up. It's a bit small. So I've got a big brush, but once again I can, this is kind of like a nice shape, I can paint within the shape, and I don't have to, and it won't let me paint outside it. If I want to increase the water, maybe increase the opacity and reduce the water, I can actually add some more color. Okay, I can go Control D and take off that. If I don't want it to move at all, I can dry the layer really quickly, right? So nothing on that layer, this is a new layer, nothing on that layer will move. Let's actually keep it dry, and for example, let's do another shape. I love this experimentation. Oh, my brushes have disappeared. Let's have a look. Let's try the magic. Oh, not that one. Let's try freehand, see what happens. So I'm on my new layer, and freehand, I can just draw a shape, right? And I'll hit enter. Hopefully I have closed that up, and I'm going to go for, let's see, we've used most of these nice colors here in our color wheel. So we did gouache bristle. Let's try a gouache dry. Maybe we use white for this one. So here's a nice gouache dry. Now remember, we are on a different layer. Okay, we are not on the same layer. Now, one very creative way you can do this is you can do a selection, and you can do the selection on a different layer. So you could do one selection per layer, and then you can move the layers around to to do anything you want. So I'm going to add some more paint in there. Okay, and that will give me a nice let's add maybe some grey and maybe some brown. Oh, I shouldn't do brown because that's very close to the color that's on the other layer, but it doesn't really matter because it's a different layer. Okay, now I'm going to wet the layer, and immediately you can see that this is flowing within that selection. It's actually flowing quite organically. I've got the diffusion speed down to 3, so it's not going to flow as quickly as if I knocked it up to, if I knock it up to like 7 or even 5, you'll see that it's going to flow pretty quickly. Okay, and if I do Control D, it might actually flow outside. I think it will. No, it's not even flowing outside actually. I did a good job at closing up the layer. So let's turn the bottom layer off. So we have our 2 layers here. Now I can do Control T, but all I can do is move these layers together because they're one unit. They're on the same layer. Okay, so just say OK at the bottom here. If I added yet another layer, say, and I drew some more shapes, let's try another shape here. I think you can only have one shape at a time, but you can add to a shape or you could subtract from a shape. Okay, so let's say let's go for this nice blue. I hit enter to commit it. Make sure you do that. I'm going to use a different brush. Let's use the Gouache wash. It was a small size there. Let's make it up. Let's put some water. Okay, this is nice shape. So let's say I had that shape. It's on another layer, and let's add another layer. Let's call it layer 6, and I'll go and add another freehand shape. I'm trying to be creative with my shapes, and I'm not doing a particularly good job with that because I'm thinking of the recording and everything else and what I might have to cut out. So let's go for, we did bristle, let's go for the gouache dry, and let's, I don't know, this red, hit enter. So this is on another layer. Okay, so you can paint quite freely, and it gives you a good idea of what these gouache brushes do. We've got a diffusion speed of 5. Okay, and now if I want to, I'll just do Control D. So now if I want to sort of do Control T, I can move, because this is on another layer, I can actually move this shape around. Okay, that's the beauty, one of the beauties of selections. I can move it around. Okay, I can say OK. I haven't moved it from its other spot, or I can decide to do Control T and move this other layer around. I can also press shift and transform it to make it larger. All right, so I can make this layer and this shape larger. Okay, I can also, I'm not sure whether this will work, but I should be able to, if I have the clipping mask function, I may even be able to clip it. I don't know whether this will work, so let's just see what happens. Yeah, so what I've done here is to clip my shape. So a clipping mask is a mask that controls all the layers above it. So what you can see here is that the layer, this red layer, is being controlled by the blue layer, for argument's sake, or the turquoise, this turquoise layer, this little birdie-like thing. Okay, so I have clipped it to this to this, and it's created a mask. But anyway, I don't really want to do that. It's just an option. I just wanted to see if that could work. So I'm going to click on clipping mask to undo that. I'm going to click Control T. So if I wanted to, I could move it all around. I could also move it to the bottom layer, like so. I could make the top one a clipping mask, and I get a very interesting, or rather, I could make the red shape a clipping mask and clip the blue shape to it, and I've got another creative shape altogether. So you could create different painting shapes, selections on different layers. You can clip them to each other, you can move them around, and you can basically create quite a nice set of things using selections. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. I hope you've learned something. This has been a quick exploration of using selections and using some of the gouache brushes. I will do something similar using the watercolor brushes because they have a very different kind of reaction on paper. And don't forget, the paper will affect what you the outcome you get, the masks that you get. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you in another video. Take care. Bye.